Thanks, Monica. So I'll just take the floor for the question and answers. We already have Pillay and Asif Shaya, and we have Parvez, Bokhari, and Moderator coming up as well. So, like we've been doing since yesterday, just please raise your hands if you have a question, and we'll have the microphone on your chair. The first one is, of course, Umar Jafri.
Umar Jafri. First, I'm really thankful to you for raising a number of questions. First, I'll thank Chairman PTA for allowing all these things to us. And he very clearly said, speak from the heart. And I think everybody here speaks from the heart. My question to all four panelists here. We see opportunity, not opportunities in Pakistan, but we see bottlenecks also. Right? You rightly point out all bottlenecks. But I think we should see ahead. We should forget about the past. I think with the vision of Chairman PTA, gathering like this, an international community partner with us, I think we should see ahead. Tarasa, based on your experience, working in number of similar environments, number of countries, I would like one sentence, because there are a number of things. Multi-stakeholder approach, public partnerships, policies, engagement, learning, all these things. We can talk about all the time. In one sentence, sir, how can you guide us how to get out of this complex situation? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. For the next questions, if there are, I'll request you to please make a direct question. It's not easy to cover one question from all of the panelists, so, and we're running out of time as well, so please direct one question to one speaker. Pillay? So your question, what I understood is that you want all the panelists to give one statement how Pakistan can leap forward in the digital era.
Consistent pro-market regulation, less regulatory overreach, and get private sector and civil society to do what they're good at doing best. Government is simply a facilitator, that's it.
More marketing of Pakistan's IT talent and potential through participation in international exhibitions, portraying the positive side of Pakistan. We have a lot of IT talent and potential, and the world doesn't know about it. So we need to market it more.
It's extremely difficult to give a one-sentence answer. And the answer that I want to give is also extremely difficult to implement. Somehow the very top leadership in Pakistan has to understand and realize the importance of ICTs in the present world and in the future.
Okay, one-liner from me. Basically, I just said it, come together, everybody. And the real one-liner which you would expect from a policy, and I agree with this, a digital economy plan with the topmost ownership at the government level. Topmost ownership and seriousness. That's the answer. The digital economy plan will obviously include everything in its way. So a digital economy plan with topmost leadership ownership on it.
Good to hear that from you, that there is a need of planning towards the digital economy, and that's again one of our main agenda point for IIM Islamabad. Any other questions? So we have Mr. Talat Abbasi and Professor Gihan.
Thank you. So my question is maybe and so you mentioned about zero rating and all that. I think there's two things. One is zero rating of very low cost for affordability, and the other one is prioritization, so you get it fast. Both of them are sort of part of this whole idea. I think one of the criticism against that is when it's done in some kind of secret deal. Do you think it would be a good idea to make this a very transparent process so that if any companies, big or small, wants to get zero rated, there is standard procedure, just follow it and you get X amount of money. Would that really help, or do you think there's any other solution? Because I think, as I'm discussing with you, zero rating is not a bad thing, it's a good thing, but we need to make it, we need to get the benefit of that and avoid the disadvantages. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so the criticisms around zero rating, a lot of it has been about specifically the Facebook's internet.org offering and the lack of clarity. For example, was Facebook paying the telecom operators? Was it vice versa? Were the app developers having to pay and so on? At the moment, the state of play, I mean, in the biggest market near here, which is India, is that the platform is open to every app developer as long as you meet the technical criteria, like it has to work on feature phones and stuff like that. It is open to any telecom operator, so there's no reason governments can't get on this. The contracts that are agreed upon between the telecom operators and Facebook, as far as I know, have never been made public. And I suppose that in itself is a problem in knowing how, and that has been part of the controversy. So Facebook opening it up has been part of their answer to this, right? It's open to anybody, anybody can zero rate kind of thing. Traffic prioritization is a whole other thing. There's very, very little rules or regulations about transparency around traffic prioritization. And you know, obviously, way more than I do about this. Networks do prioritize, and most of the time we need networks to prioritize in certain ways. But whether zero-rated content, be it Facebook or inside, let's say, Airtel's own walled garden, which are much more prevalent than Facebook, telco's walled gardens, is happening or not, there isn't systematic evidence, and that's part of the problem. So a lot of the negativity around zero rating has come because we don't know the answers to this. And I think people will view this quite positively if these things do come out in the open, is what I think.
So let me just add a bit more to that. So my view is that it should not be Facebook's thing. So I mean, Facebook should be just one of the people who can get into this zero-rated thing. So it could be either per operator, or maybe the regulator could say, okay, this is how zero rating works across all operators. These are the standards, and these are the commercial terms, whatever it is. Right now, I don't see that happening. Maybe it's happening in some markets, but not that I'm aware of. But I sort of thought that might be a good way to approach this problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why only, well, there is and isn't. There is no technical, economic reason why Facebook is only doing this and nobody else is. So the options for government or operators is to just join and put your content on the Facebook platform, or to create your own wall garden. So, you know, puceservices.org or something can be easily zero-rated, right, if you have an agreement with the telco. But there's a problem in that people find zero-rated social media content the most attractive thing, or even paid social media content. So the fact that Facebook is offered free, even the video-free, picture-free version, is sort of the honeypot. That's what gets people there. And once you're there, you might consume other services. So if you just create an app for e-Gov services only, will people come? I don't know, because social media is the killer app. So it's a...
I think that would be the last question.
Hi, it's Talat Abbasi here. I work for PTA. Just would like to say that nation learn from reflection of the past. And I mean, it's a positive reflection is a positive outcome. So I wish to say is that you know, the top-down approach was needed, as Mr. Iftikhar rightly addressed. So this realization, we need to have that now as well. I mean, the past, we're not far from what we have done in past. That is not the issue. But no, we need to, how do we make this realize to the top elite up there that this is a, you know, very important to go about it, and they should, you know, press down the top-down approach.
And your question is to?
Well, the government.
Well, you have to pick one of them, so you have picked the government.
Would you be?
I think Asim probably would, from the IT perspective, from the ICT industry perspective, if you want to answer the question.
Or
Well, I've just answered the question in my own professional opinion in the past one. We do realize top-down, yeah, topmost ownership. Anywhere where it has worked, you look at Korea, you look at US, you look at it. It has a topmost level ownership, and that's what's desirable anywhere because they're power guys, they're railways, transport, health. They are not related to the ministries of IT or the telecom regulators and all of these, or even ICT regulators. So if there is a national plan, it needs to be prioritized to the level, it needs to be given ownership, you're right. Because your question was not a question, it was a comment. What I do agree, I've already said it.
Thanks, Mudassar, and thank you again, all the panelists, for this Q&A. And I'd like to hand it over back to Ms. Namika.
Thank you, Naveed, for assisting the question and answer session, and thank you, respected participants, panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, today's conference is envisioned to table deliberation on Pakistan's journey towards a digital economy and help identify some of the key factors for success. To discuss all these opportunities and much more, I would now again call upon Mr. Naveedul Haq, Manager ISOC Asia Pacific, to moderate the discussion on e-government architecture, standards, interoperability, and implementation. Naveed, please come over and call your panelist.
Thanks, Namika. Okay, so this is the session on e-government. And of course, when you talk about digital economy, it always starts from top to bottom. It's important to have digitalization of the public services to enhance the productivity and, of course, empowerment of the workforce. And then give this opportunity to the larger mass of a country like Pakistan, where we see around 90% of mobile penetration. So the tool is in the hand of masses, and we'll try to deliberate how Pakistan can use this opportunity to provide better public services to its citizens. So I'd like to call upon my panelists for today's e-government session. The first one is Mr. Harish Pillay. Mr. Harish Pillay is the Global Head, Community Architecture and Leadership for Red Hat Corporation. And he has been in the IT industry for over 25 years. He's currently with Red Hat, heading up a team that engages with the global open source community. He holds a BS and MS in computer sciences and electrical engineering. Harish has been involved with the internet-related activities since 1991, and I remember when we were in Singapore, he told me his amazing story of how he started actually his internet journey and how the FTP came into the being and how scared he was and who's going to pay for that. And also, thank you, Harish, for coming. He's also serving as president of the Internet Society Singapore chapter. Reason why we have invited Harish is to showcase the smart Singapore and try to, provide some kind of a case study to our audience about what's happening in these amazing digital economies or countries like Singapore and how Pakistan probably can take some ideas out of that. My next speaker would be Wisit Atipayakoon from ITU. Wisit joined the ITU in 2005 as a telecom and ICT specialist. He's based in Bangkok, Thailand. He's been doing ICTs and project management and has an extensive experience in areas like e-government, ICT applications, universal service obligations, rural communication, and many. Before joining ITU, he's worked with Lucent Technologies in Thailand and in Singapore. He holds a bachelor degree in computer engineering from King Mongkut Institute of Technology in Bangkok, and is also certified PMP and SAP consultant. Thank you, Wisit, for joining us. And the reason why we have Wisit today with us is that he will be sharing a more global and regional perspective, what's been happening, and again, to produce some substance to the local participants. Our next speaker is Dr. Hasnain Bokhari. Dr. Hasnain Bokhari is an associated academic staff with Willy Brandt School of Public Policy, University of Erfurt, Germany. He holds a PhD in public policy with emphasis on e-government. His research interest includes ICT for development, and he has been associated with Internet Governance Forum, ICT for D, and e-government debates since Wisit's process back in 2005. He has been a consultant to GIZ on e-learning, and since 2010 he is also associated with the Center for Development Informatics at Manchester University, UK. So thank you, Hasnain, for being with us. And the reason, again, why we have Hasnain with us is to showcase the success stories and maybe some opportunities from the Pakistani side. So if you have been attending this INET, our main emphasis in terms of the speaker have been that we have a multi-dimensions from each of them. Unfortunately, we're not having Dr. Umar Saif, who's the chairman, Punjab Information Technology Board. He had an unscheduled urgent commitment to fill, and we really wanted him to tell the amazing success of e-government in Punjab and how his team is trying to deliver the services to the people of Punjab. I'll now like to invite Mr. Harish for opening the session through the presentation. Over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Naveed, for the introduction, and thank you very much for coming back from tea. I'm actually kind of, I was a bit surprised when Naveed asked me to speak about Smart Singapore. I can't speak for the country, I can only speak for myself as a Singaporean, but I'll try to do justice as a, as a Singaporean for this. So, there we go. So I'm speaking for not for anybody else, but for myself, okay? But I think I do speak for a lot of people as well. So I'm happy to be controversial if necessary. So let me give a quick history lesson. What I'm trying to do is to get you a sense of how we came to where we are today in Singapore, the challenges that we faced, and the decisions that had to be made, and some of the lessons that were learned, and hopefully some of those lessons I have tried to distill that into 5 different things that hopefully will be able to be useful as a discussion point as well. So quick history lesson. In the 1970s, in the Singapore context, we became independent in 1965 as an independent country. So this year marks the 50th anniversary of the independence. In the 1970s, we were faced with problems in terms of the economy, in terms of the countries around the region developing fast in the same pace as us, but our cost of labor was going up. So we needed to find ways to make sure we can mitigate the cost of labor by using technology. So labor productivity had to be increased. So we need to find ways to make this happen. And by the way, in the 1970s, I was a little kid. So I'm just seeing what I've seen. I'm recounting what I've heard, for what my parents talked about, some of my teachers were talking about in school, and generally what's happening in the country. In the 1980s, the Singapore government set up something called the Civil Service Computerization Program. So you can see how arcane that sounds. It's just like if you were to come across a phrase that says Electronic Processing Department on the wall somewhere in some office, that's fairly ancient. Nobody says Electronic Processing Department anymore. But that was what we had at that point in time, and that made sense because that was what was necessary. So it launched many initiatives, and one of those initiatives was known as TradeNet. TradeNet and LawNet were the two prominent ones. The objective was, in TradeNet, was to be able to get a ship that comes into the port of Singapore to be able to offload the containers and reload with the transshipment or whatever that was needed to be transshipped back onto the container ship, and off it goes. They managed to get this done with all the bill of lading and all the necessary paperwork online in the 1980s. What turned out to be, and it's actually still fascinating for me, where my office is currently in Singapore, it overlooks the port. And you can sit down at the window and watch the ships come in, offload the containers, reload with new whatever containers in 20 minutes. You can time it, you can watch it and see this happening. And it is remarkable that that goes on continuously 24 hours a day. Why? Because you needed productivity. You need to make sure you turn around the services and options available. So TradeNet was one of those things that happened in the 1980s. Essentially, what recognized across the board was the option to give people opportunity to do things is what you see, the little tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of complexity that is below. This is something not immediately obvious when you talk about e-government services. There's a lot of things that happens at the back. Just because I have a portal does not mean my job is done. There are significant amount of effort that needs to go on continuously at the back end before anything useful happens in the front end. So in the 1990s and beyond, broadband internet in Singapore became, fairly useful. Again, we are talking about the web only happening in 1993. So broadband didn't really happen in Singapore until 1999 or 2000, somewhere around that time. But when I talk about beyond, it's talking about the last 15 years, okay, from the turn of the century. That's when things like high-speed ADSL networks being available at a fairly cheap price. It became, the next stage was onto 3G networks, your data services. So like today, for example, at home, I know not everybody has the benefit of what I have. I have 1 gig to my home for about $25 US. 1 gig to the home. And, there's service providers giving me another 1 gig fiber to the home for another $5 or something. So $30 US, I get 2 gig to the home. Fine, I can stream everything I want all the time. So I'm not using that as a benchmark by any means, but I'm just saying that's what we are today. This is something that you can also achieve. So there are 5 lessons in all of this, okay? And I have arranged it in a particular order, and for very obvious reasons you'll see later. The first lesson is all government services that can be delivered electronically shall be delivered electronically. I underline those 2 words in red as well because it's not immediately obvious that something can be delivered and that you really want to deliver. But the thing is this is sometimes aspirational. If you don't even think about, can I deliver this electronically? If that thinking process hasn't even started, you don't even know whether you can do it. Just because, and I'll give you an example which I think it's a bit sensitive to mention, but I'll mention it anyway. The application for my visa to come to Pakistan. It wasn't the most pleasant experience. It was a paper, it was a PDF I had to download, I had to print it out, it was 6 pages long. I needed to fill up all the items in there just to get a visa to come here. This is 2015. I'm sure we can do better than that, okay? So that can definitely be done electronically. I don't have to print out on a piece of paper. Then to effectively deliver government services electronically, standards have to be observed and enforced. In other words, you don't do things in silos. Don't have one ministry or one service provider within the government agencies doing things on their own without standards. If you don't have standards, you cannot interoperate. When you cannot interoperate, you have barriers. When you have barriers, there is friction. When there is friction, people don't want to deal with it. They just walk away. And the entire effort goes to waste. It has to be enforced. There must be a way to enforce compliance to standards. Once you see the benefit of standards and compliance, you find it becomes a no-brainer. You don't have to enforce it after that because people will recognize the value in it. It is the early stage that you have to be a little bit of a taskmaster to make sure that that happens. Now, standards also have to be open, and it must be freely accessible to anyone to build on. And I would throw up this idea of open source reference implementation. What does this mean? It means when you have to create something for the first time, and it has not been done before, for example, especially in government, build it in a way that you have an open implementation of record. That could be the one that you actually deploy, but once you publish it, there is an open source reference implementation. Anybody else can build using that as a starting point. Because you don't want to be, an open source reference implementation ensures that the knowledge of the technology will always be available in the open. Whatever ideas that you came up with is always available. It's not going to be hidden or lost when you have a, it wouldn't be lost when you have a situation as follows. This is something that happened in South Korea. This is an article that came out in April this year. In the year 2000, 1999-2000, South Korea decided across the board to standardize on ActiveX as the tool to interface between banks and the end user, and as well as government services. ActiveX is a proprietary protocol. So what happens, fast forward a few years, Microsoft is not interested in that anymore. And now what are they doing? They have now go and retrofit the entire civil service, e-government services, plus the banks, plus everybody else to make sure that you are compliant to standards. That's not the way you want to do things. You cannot have that as a national rollout. You cannot be held beholden to a proprietary protocol. Not moving, yeah. So at a national level, you cannot compromise your independence to closed source solutions. Plain and simple. You are the nation state. You have to make sure that you should be able to survive on your own with your own skill sets, not dependent on somebody else. So with an open source, can you go back one, please? Okay. So with an open source reference implementation, all right, you have the needed gold standard for continuity. That guarantees a gold standard. That's the minimum you need. The second lesson, open data. Data portals give the citizens the ability to co-create with you. Because let's be honest about it. You are sitting in a government agency, government ministry, and you have your own issues to worry about. It's not easy for you to think sufficiently outside your sphere of interest or focus to look at other ways of doing things with the data you have. Let us empower the citizens to do this. So creating data portals on the net will certainly help in that direction. And that's a lesson that Singapore has learned. And we have created data.gov.sg. I would encourage you to have a look at it and see there's something like 10 or 15,000 data sets. You can mix and mesh whatever you want to with it and create applications. This is known as what Olaf was mentioning yesterday, the permissionless innovation. That's what drives this thing. Lesson number 3, industry collaboration. The government should only be a catalyst and let the industry lead and innovate. Just be there to push it along, because if you don't do it, there'll be too many different channels. Governments are an ideal candidate for being a catalyst. Lesson 4, new ideas should be adopted quickly. Okay, governments and learn from mistakes. There's a phrase known as fail early, fail fast. Now, governments don't like to fail. I agree. But if you state up front what you're trying to do, and state up front that, hey, we are going to experiment with this idea, we're going to try this, we give ourselves 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, state it up front. And engage with the citizenry, engage with the people, say, look, we're trying this experimental, let's do this. When you have that buy-in, it's a lot easier when you fail. And recognize that when you fail, we are going to take whatever lessons we learn and move on to the next one. This is how the open source development model has worked successfully across the board. It is what drives the economy today. It's an understatement, but that's what is driving the economy today. Risk-taking. New ideas should be adopted quickly. Okay? Come on, move on to the next one. Okay. This is lesson number 5. This is the last one. This is going to be a little bit tricky, I think. Stable political leadership. Now, this has to be done in many ways. One way which I would think makes sense and possibly you need to think about is have a political discourse that values consistency and deliverance. So when you're going to be starting on a new project, it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. Infrastructure building is a long-term project. Can these long-term projects survive change of government? How can you ensure that good ideas, good efforts, money spent, efforts expended, can it be sustained between changes of government? This is not specific to Pakistan or anything like that. This is across the board. Many countries I've seen this happen, and it doesn't sustain between different governments. In the case of Singapore, we were fortunate in some ways that we had that consistency. So we were able to get where we are today because of that consistency. But I'm not saying that it's applicable to everyone, but at least recognize that this is a learning, this is a lesson. So how can we do this in a way that makes everybody happy? So the 5 lessons together help drive the creation of a smart city or a nation. So in a summary, these are the 5 points. Open source, open standards, open data. I noticed that data.gov.pk currently does not exist. Why not? Make it available. Start today. Start an initiative. Make that work. Industry collaboration. Have as many means to collaborate with industry, because that's where, as we heard earlier, a lot of the smart people are out there. The governments cannot hire all the smart people within your citizenship. You can't. It's impossible to hire everybody. So find ways to work with them. Find ways to collaborate. Have ecosystems of collaboration. Be the leader in taking some risk. State it up front that this is a risky one. We're going to try this. We may fail, but I'm telling you, we're going to try this anyway. Try it. Once you try it, and if it fails, at least people understand that. But if you succeed, that's a pat on the back. And then you can go to the next one. So I think this helps build the confidence and trust. And the last one is stable politics. That's a bit tricky. That I have to leave it to you to figure out how you want to do this. But it's a thing that you need to understand. I'm calling out what I see, what I've seen in my own country. So sharing lessons learned and see how that works for you. And with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Harish, for sharing these 5 lessons. And one of the lines I just picked from your presentation was that data is the new oil. It's really critical for the public institutes to realize how they can use this oil to increase efficiency and embrace innovation. And our next speaker would be Wisit. Wisit, floor is yours.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Naveed, for your introduction. And actually, I just realized when you read my bio, it sounds really technical. I'm like a technical person, and I'm sure that I'm not going to speak to you in Java language. Actually, I'm not a technical person, although my major a little bit technical, like computer engineering. My early professional career also a little bit technical. But nowadays, I come back to this, and nowadays I'm doing more on the policy and political level, and that is the focus of my presentation today as well. So before I start, I'd like to thank ISOC, PTA, and those who are organizing this event for inviting me and ITU to participate. The reason I say this is because I found this kind of forum is very useful. Not only this one, but a forum like this, because more or less I pick up some very good points, very good ideas from the forum, and I'm sure that all of you also collect some very good suggestions. So this is the role that we, as an international organization or regional organization or whoever, can do to promote the digital economy. And if we have time, we come back to this in terms of the role that we can play. My presentation today is not, actually it's very much in line with Mr. Pillay, which is not technical, and I'm going to talk more on the political side as well. But first of all, I will skip this. I think you already know about ITU, what we are doing, who we are. So I just move to very quickly. Actually, my presentation is divided into two parts. The first part is a little bit boring, which is talking about something that you already know. And the second part, which I like to focus on. So I will move very quickly on the first part, which is more on the summary of the Wisit Plus 10. And I'm sure that many of you know about this. So Wisit Plus 10 is a high-level forum, high-level meeting, which discusses about a lot of issues on the ICT, digital society. So these are the 11 action lines identified under the Wisit action. And the last Wisit Plus 10 meeting, which was held this year, actually, this I captured the screen from last year, but the Wisit Plus 10 this year was held in Geneva. Okay, I'm not going to read all this, but what I like to say is that the high-level people or the leaders identify some issues or challenges in terms of the e-government, and e-government is actually action line 7. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Where's the... All right, okay, okay, let's, okay. No, actually, this is not the one that, all right. The challenges that countries are facing, actually, we know it very well. The big challenge is, collaboration, not only among the government ministry agencies, but also with the private sector, with the civil society. And another challenge is more on how to close the gap of development in terms of the e-government or digital society between countries. Those developed countries and developing countries, highly income developing countries, middle income, low income developing countries. Those kind of challenges. So there are some recommendations that came out from this Wisit Plus 10 meeting. And those issues or those recommendations always are around funding, collaboration, the political leadership, and also some technical issue as well. So I believe those kind of things we already know. So I don't want to spend too much time discussing on that. So let's come to the realities. What are the realities in implementing e-government initiative? So a lot of researchers or publications, scholars have been talking about what is the e-government actually and how to implement e-government. And this is just one of the summary that I captured here. E-government is essentially a political, not a technical project, which means that managerial and institutional reform must accompany a technological change. And that is the focus of my presentation today, which is political leadership, and Mr. Pillay also already talked about it, and I really appreciate his presentation. The e-government is, when we talk about the e-government, we talk about the government, we talk about the process. So actually it's a political. So this morning we heard Pawes talking about to implement this kind of initiative, we need a body which can supervise the whole initiative. It's not a a mandate of a single ministry or single agencies like a Ministry of IT, but it's it's a collaboration. We heard very often today of talking about collaborative approach, the collaboration, and that is the key. That is very important. But how? The question is how to implement it. So one way to implement it, I'm not saying that there's only one single solution, but one way which we have seen Korea has done it already, is that to set up a body, a special body, a high-level body, which reports to the head of the state or the head of the government. And this body would supervise the overall, the policy, the high-level things. And then under this body, there could be a working or a special committee, which is, make sure that everything is going well under the implementation level. That is very important because we have witnessed a lot of countries, and even myself, I have done quite a number of e-government projects. And rather than working on the analysis or the solutions, I spend half of my time trying to understand the nature of the politics in those countries, and spend a lot of time talking to people, talking to the governments, negotiating, and a little bit like a lobbying as well. To make sure that the project would go, as we expect, and many times it doesn't go as I plan or as I expect. So political leadership is very important. But then, when we are talking about politics, we are talking about politicians, and a lot of people feel like it's hopeless. So, what are the practical, solution or measure that we could do? So, I talk about setting up a special body, which is, reporting directly to the head of state. That is one thing that countries should do. In Korea, the success of the e-government, actually of the digital society or digital economy in Korea, is a fruit of 3 decades effort. 30 years, I think actually more than 30 years. So it didn't happen in one day or in 10 years. It happened because of the effort along these 30 years. And that is because of part of this success is because of the political stability. You know very well that in the beginning, the Korea has a kind of a dictatorship government. So then it could implement whatever that the government, not whatever, but many things that the government wanted. And at that time, went back to the 1978. I think 1978, when the Korean government started the first policy on the national computer network policy, something like that. And actually, the first policy on the first IT policy failed. So actually, the country picked up this IT policy in 1980s, and since then it's moving. And one of the strategies during that period is that, Korea just came out, from the Korean War in 1950s. And the government, the country relied very much on the overseas assistance, on the loans and on the grant, money from IMF, World Bank. One of the strategies at the time is that the Korean government used this money, rather than paying back other countries, they used the money to invest in the infrastructure and pay it later. So this is kind of a strategy. Infrastructure including many things, transport. They built the highway from Seoul to Busan, and then they are also building up, this fiber optics and everything. And you can imagine that how challenging it is the government was facing. While the countries, and this could be applied in many countries right now, while the government has a lot of other high issues, the issues are on the agendas, poverty, the low price of, agricultural products, many issues that the government is facing. Why the government should invest in ICT? And that is very challenging. And at that time, Korean invest a lot of money in purchasing 10 million PCs for the government officials and also for the people, the local authorities and also for the people. During the time while the country is still picking up, from the very low level. So you can imagine that this is very challenging. It's like playing a game. It's like, make a bet whether it's going to be successful or not. So apart from this, the organization structure, the setting up the body, what we could learn from Korea is another thing. And again, this can be applied in some countries, maybe in Pakistan as well, because we can't be sure that the government, the same government would stay for very long. So we need to find a mechanism that could ensure that the initiative, the policy would be implemented for a long time. And that could be the institutional arrangement, meaning that the legal framework. In Korea, if you go to the website and then counting how many laws related to IT, there are so many. Once the president or the high-level government officials decided to do something, so they try to enact laws related to those mandates. And because you know that the laws, policy is easy to change, but laws are a little bit more difficult. So if the laws already mandate the government agencies to do things, so that is a little bit more stable than the policy. Because of Mr. Pillay spoke yesterday, if the new government comes in, even though the policy is good, they would change it a little bit, maybe change the name or whatever, or modify it a little bit. So the idea is that we need to ensure that the policy, the good policy that we formulated, need to be implemented until the end. So legal framework is one thing that we could do. Then, actually I don't have many slides. I'm just talking on this issue. Still on the political issue. Then we are dealing with the politicians, we are dealing with the politics. So how we are going to make sure that the politicians or the politics would accommodate our requirements or our desires. Another two things that you could think about, that we have to create a political motivation. Political motivation could be something that, the government would be comfortable to do things that, they will get elected again. And what is that? Nowadays the governments are doing a lot of populist policies, even in my own countries, injecting money to the rural communities, rural areas. That is a quick win, But in terms of the digital society, digital economy, or e-government, this can be done as well. So focusing on the basic services that could win people in rural areas or in the majority of people. So services that could kind of comfort their life or make it easier or for their living or even saving costs. So those kind of services, there are some services that could be done in that fashion. And another political motivation is building trust, and we heard a lot in a lot of e-government forums. We are saying that the e-government could build trust between government and the people. But how the government, how the politician would benefit from trust? If the people trust the government, right, the likelihood of the government would be elected, re-elected, is very high. So then the government, this government should build the trust with the citizens. And how to build trust? Open government, open data is one of the things. But also you have to make sure that the people would benefit from whatever measures that the government come up with in terms of the e-government. Another, apart from the political motivation, another thing is political pressure. So if there's no motivation, or if very little motivation, or if the motivation is not strong enough, so then create pressure. So I'm sure that governments in our country already have a lot of pressures, but you need to create a strong, very hard, very strong pressures that would move the government to do something. And what we can do about this? One is to strengthen the civil society, and civil society would be your advocacy to voice out. If there are many ways to strengthen, but the idea is that if the citizens, if the civil society requests, call the government for some actions. If they see something that can be done, like our previous distinguished speaker has said, whatever can be done electronically should be done electronically. So if people are aware of that, they would push or pressure the government to do that. Another thing that can be done is to create a pilot project. And this is something that many countries are doing, pilot projects. It could be, we could start from a small pilot project, medium or large project. Small project could be like pick up one public services to implement it and make a case. Of course, international cases are very useful, but make your own case. And I'm sure that Pakistan, I'm very sure that if we really study of what's going on in Pakistan, there are many successful cases in Pakistan in terms of the e-government. But you need to make cases and then make the kind of, the demand or people demand for it. A large scale, for example, a large scale project or pilot project is a smart city. In Thailand and also in other countries, the government are thinking of making a pilot smart city because it's a quick win. But again, it's not easy as they think. Smart city encompasses a lot of things a lot of issues as well that we need to think about. But the idea is the political motivation and the political pressure. And another point that I like to talk about, and still on the on the same slide. Actually, about the policy, this morning we heard a member of Telecom, Mr. Hussein, talking about the policy. And policy is, if we're talking about the e-government policy or even the digital economy policy, it's not a ministry policy, it's a government's policy. Right? So the policy should be formulated, have to be formulated in collaboration with, with the whole government, and that is what we call the whole of government approach. And how to do that, right? Because I don't know in Pakistan, in Thailand, for example, Minister of ICT is not really, what I can say is it's not a class A ministry. So other ministries which have bigger budget, more important, they don't listen. So you have to talk to, okay, if you don't have the special body, like I said, then you should try to make sure that the digital economy or digital society policy would be part of the national plan. In Pakistan, you have a Vision 2025. It's very good. Actually, I read it, and it was very well written. However, it's still a vision. It still needs plan. It still needs a lot of policy. It still needs a lot of legislation to be formulated under that vision. So make sure that the ICT or the digital economy would be part of the national plan and would be part of the subsequent national policy. The whole policy, not just the digital economy policy, but the whole policy. And first, make sure that ICT is part of the plan. Then another aspect is that, and this a lot of people are not thinking about, you can use the ICT, you can leverage, you can harness the power of the ICT in making policy. For example, with the advanced technologies nowadays, you can use a lot of, there are so many technologies, social network, fuzzy logic system, and a lot of things that you could collect data from people from everywhere. The Internet of Things, you could collect the data, open data, big data, and then you use that data to formulate the policy. And this is already happening in Europe. And if you do more study on this, you will find that a lot of governments in Europe and also in other developed countries, they use these technologies to create a policy. Giving you an example, there's one city, I don't remember what the city it is, but in Europe, that the local government is planning to build a public park. So they make a portal, and also with the social network system, with a kind of a fuzzy logic process to get the opinions or views from the citizens, where the public park should be built. In the public park, what kind of facility, what kind of activities should be designed in those public parks, and then the people can participate. This is the idea of the next generation e-government. That we could call the government e-government 3.0. So engage the citizens and harness the power of the ICT in making the policy. And I mean, for the developing countries, we don't need to start in the old fashion, in starting from when we look at the Korea or other countries, we don't need to follow those kind of steps. We could leapfrog or jumpstart because of the technologies are available nowadays. When we look back, the government, e-government, starting from the government 1.0, which is only one-way communication. Government put a lot of information on the website or whatever and inform the citizens. Government 2.0 is more interactive, right? Collaborative with the citizen. I mean, citizen can interact with the government. But now the idea or the concept of the government 3.0 is that the whole collaboration with the citizen, government, industry, private sector, and everything. And the most important thing of the concept of the government 3.0 is personalized service. And I give you example of, again, in Korea, and that is going to be implemented, I think, this year. I don't know how much time I have left. Okay. The concept, the idea of the government 3.0 is that all the service, not all the services would be personalized or would be categorized to suit the requirements of the citizens. For example, the tax in Korea, the national tax system, usually, when you submit the tax form, you have, at the end of the year, you have to fill the form, you have to calculate things and doing everything by yourself and then submit it, right? But in Korea, starting from this year, the government would prepare all the documents for you because why and how they can do it? Because they have data. They have all the data that they require. They prepare the form for you, and then the citizen or people just review, just check. If it's correct, then submit it. So services are categorized. Public services for children, public services for workers, for professionals, public service for the elderly. So this kind of service will be categorized and personalized to suit the people. This is the concept of the e-government 3.0. And actually I have so many things, but okay, when we're talking about the last thing about the policy, when we are looking at the policy, the e-government policy, the more we are looking at, the more we see that anything, if not everything, is relevant. That's why it's a little bit difficult for me to choose a topic to talk today, because anything is relevant. We're talking about broadband. Broadband is relevant. Cybersecurity is relevant. With what else are we talking about? Standard, architecture, everything is relevant. So that's why we really need someone to look at the big picture, because the pitfall is this. When you are looking into or spend a lot of time designing or formulating a policy, you tend to be look into one or a few aspects in particular and deep into that those aspects, and then you forget about the big picture. And this happened to me many times as well. So okay, have someone at the high level to look at the big picture and have people who are implementing it, and also encourage the collaboration among this party, government, private sector, and the civil society. Okay, one last minute, if I may. Talking about the digital economy, actually, I hope that we can discuss in the Q&A session. But another aspect that the government should do is SME. And this morning we heard a lot about the SMEs. SME and startup are very important. But I just would like to give a food for thought for you. A lot of startup happening these days, a lot. And a lot of them die. So the government need to think about how to make them come back. So, of course, like I listened to the presentation from PCEP today. They have a workshop on training people how to make a business plan, like a mentor or something like that. But believe me, even though you're doing that, a lot of them will struggle and will die. So then, in terms of the policy level, the legal framework, and also the measures, the government measures, you have to think about how to make them come back. And this is very important, because when people fail, it hurts. And then sometimes it's very difficult for them to come back. So the government can do something like this. And this is happening in Korea as well, that they have even the laws to kind of facilitate or open a new, opportunity again for those people who fail and come back. They call it a rehabilitation program and a comeback camp. So that kind of thing that I like to leave it here. Actually, I have a lot to share, but I hope that we can do it offline or whatever we have time. Thank you very much. Yeah.